Okay, here's a new one in from the Greek Reporter. Just came out August 10th, 2021. Archaeologists claim that they've discovered the Trojan Horse in Turkey, Anatolia. And so they burnt the thing because they knew that there was something wrong with it. You know what happened last time. I'm just kidding. This is it. They found it. It's amazing. It's so large, they should have seen it a lot of times. It was just hidden right here among these trees. I'm just kidding again, guys. This is a representation of it, or something that's meant to look much like the Trojan horse for an effigy for people to look at. Although right off the bat, whenever I see something like this, and it's got the windows in the side of it, and the little cottage on top, and especially the stairway leading up into the nether region of the horse there, it just doesn't look like what possibly could have been going on. There's been a lot of said about Troy and whether it really existed or not, and if the stories were really true, in the Iliad and the Odyssey and so on. But really, that story's not in the Iliad and the Odyssey. It's in the Aeneid, which comes way later. At the time of Caesar and stuff, they talk about here, but it's the only time whenever they make this discussion afterwards. But there's a lot of Greek vases and things. We'll see a few depictions of this, but the story goes that they built this effigy of a giant horse that could hold a few troops inside of it, and this was one of their elite forces, kind of like having their green berets in it. And then they took it up to the place, and if you've ever seen the Monty Python version of it, or if you ever watched the actual version Troy, that we had for not too long ago as a movie with Brad Pitt and so on, they make a depiction of it. One thing I have a problem with that, and even this depiction right here, whenever you look at the size of it, it doesn't seem to have any wheels on it. And anything built of this size would have surely had to have wheels on it, and I'm of a belief that right above the top of that column right there, that this horse would have been chopped off at that point, but probably still stood up this high because it would have been on 10-foot tall tires. It would have been on things that looked like tractor tires. If it was built like this, it would have one on the outside and the inside of each of the four legs, and have a single axle running through in each one, probably too, if they were built it worth a damn. But the story goes that they took their ships that they came with, and then those ships they tore down and turned into this. So you can kind of look at the main portion of the body and see that idea of a ship. It almost has this Noah's thing with the little ark thing and the stuff up on top. Long time ago, thinking about this, I came up with the idea that when they took the ship apart, instead of having the horse head on it like this right here, it would have had just one coming off the front, much smaller, out of size for sure, but one of those ones on the front of those Phoenician type ships that we know about that has that horse head or dragon's head on it and so on. And it could be right on the front of this thing as a bow, as opposed to this giant thing that looks like the chess piece, if you will. Also, I often thought the idea of why they thought it looked like a horse could have been the tail, which would have just been a keel sticking down. And if you look there at that is that keel. But they have really enlarged it to make it look more like a horse. We tried to play this out in the Dungeons and Dragons game that we played and stuff, and of course we could play it out correctly and made it work out correctly. But in discussions, even in the group, it seemed like it was far-fetched, and they brought up a point that was, something that I brought up back in class, that I think it was probably more of something like a siege engine, and now that led to a mythology where this happened. And this concept, if you were to take that staircase that you have going up and just put it on the tail end of it, cut that tail off where it would be if it was actually the rudder of the ship, and put people being able to go up in there and then run up into the ship part of it in the middle body and come out the front of it eventually, that's probably more apropos. Or even eventually getting up on top with a hatch being there and flip it open and get on top of it. Studying siege weapons and siege engines and catapults and all of this type of stuff for the D&D campaign type stuff that we went in and tried to get into some major battles, but that wasn't a real cool part of the game for most of us. We figured out something that, or I saw something in an ancient tale where it said they took something that was about like a half a horse, or shaped as such, was 30 foot tall, and the top part of it, or the horse's head, would reach over the castle wall, and people were already in this, but everybody pushed this thing up to it, the wall, and whenever they did, it was taking arrow fire, but it was covered real well, and then they busted open and started going over and in, and everybody was going up the stairs, and then the people that were distant ran in towards the wall so they could get somebody in that tube and go up the tunnel and just start going. And once it became chaos and they got a lot of people going onto it, it broke out and you couldn't stop it. But what stuck with me on that concept was he said it was something like a half a horse. So if you took the letter that would be going up the tail of it now, the part I'm talking about where you flipped it around to the rear end of it, and just put it up against the front part of the carriage, the front part of the horse, and ran it up from the middle, like you would up under it there, now what we have is a siege engine tower. So it's quite possibly have something like this, and indeed this was actually found on the grounds that were there. Behind it now you can see cedar and fir trees and so on, and that's what it's supposed to be made out of. So let's get into this real quick. Turkish archaeologists claim they have found what they believe are pieces of the Trojan Horse. According to a report by Newsit GR, Turkish archaeologists excavating at the site of the historical city of Troy on the hills of the Hisarlik have unearthed a large wooden structure. Historians and archaeologists think what they have discovered are remains of the legendary Trojan horse. The excavations brought to light dozens of fir planks, so it's the right wood, perhaps, and beams up to 15 meters or 49 feet, almost 50 feet long beams. So that would correspond. These remnants were assembled in a strange form that led the experts to suspect that they belonged to the Trojan horse. The wooden structure was inside the walls of the ancient city of Troy. So they found it inside of there. Here's a depiction that you'd see on vase work, ancient vase work. What always struck me weird is a lot of these things is that if you look in there, there have windows in that too. But in the windows, it's only big enough for people's heads, right? And I'll be damned if that isn't the skinniest horse and looks more like a giraffe or not, just real skinny. But if you look closer at it, they've got their arms sticking out the window and they are giving stuff away, it seems. Starting up here, they're giving away a helmet, but their helmet seems to be just like their helmets, which doesn't make any sense. Usually whenever you see some depiction of war in here, that one people have one helmet, one have another, one have a style of shield or something, a lot of people are known to have spears, the other guys, and so on. So there's the shown differential. And while they are double spearmen, and you can see it over there too, double spearmen, these other guys have swords. And one other thing that they're letting loose here and giving away, like this guy here is giving away his shield, but this guy is giving away his sword and his scabbard and his little belt that attached on and everything. So he's giving up his weapons to some people here. That doesn't sound at all like it's supposed to go. Like they came in with a thing that's like a boat and people were inside of it handing out their weapons to people outside because they were supposed to be hidden, and everybody got drunk and went to sleep, and whenever they did, they came out, and of course they had other people running up at that time, and they opened up the gates, and it all happened at once, and haha, got you, right? But also, that shield is the same as that shield, which is kind of odd in depictions like this. But, you know, it could just be artistic representations. Again, look what they made the horse look like. But here's another guy that's giving away his sword, and so on. So really, the only one here that's not giving away his sword is this guy right here, but that's because the area is taken up with him with his spear. And if you look at him, he doesn't have a hat with a big plume on it like the others do in the show there. For it to fit it up under here, right, they had to just squish that plume right on his head. We can't see the dress of anybody or what they're wearing, but it looks like everybody here's got a mullet. And if we look here, everybody's got a mullet too. Both types of them. So that's depicted on a vase found in Mykonos. The Trojan horse is considered by most to have been a mythical structure. The horse is commonly associated with Homer's epic poems of the Iliad and Odyssey. But the classic epic poems tell of the Trojan War and Odysseus' long journey back to Ithaca. But curiously enough, they do not feature the iconic wooden horse in those stories. In fact, the Iliad closes out right before the war is over. The story of the Trojan horse comes in at the very end of the war. It is the thing that is used as a strategy to seize Troy and win the war completely. That story of the Trojan horse is featured most prominently in the Aeneid by Virgil, a Latin text from the time of Augustus' rule in Rome. So historians suggest that the ancient writer was using the image of the horse as an analogy for war machine, like I was talking about perhaps, or even perhaps a natural disaster happening. There's another thing we have to figure in here at this point too, because horses start running down into the Levant at this time, and they make it down into Egypt, who had not had them at that time before. A lot of your biblical tales, you look at them all the time. Abraham didn't ride a horse and so on. They didn't have them in the area. It was donkeys. In fact, it's one of the things that I've shown back and forth in the religious tales, that Jesus came in with a donkey, but the second coming was to come on a horseman, 4 horsemen, and where horses came from. Here's another depiction right here, and if you'll look, there are horsemen in this, but they're showing them not to be saddled. Strangely, at the far left, you see something that looks like a giant goose or a bird. At the far right, you see something that looks like the front half of a giant lion or lioness. And people are walking all over this thing fighting. There appear to be either opening and closing windows all over the side of the horse, or maybe that's shields that are on there. The shields that you see people carrying have a swirly, almost swastika pattern to them in most cases, but then there are other ones that show this bull effigy like you see at the top in here. And this one down here. But they're conspicuously missing groups, which look like that would have been a group, just group, and as they showed them now, and then somebody's picked the plaster off probably long ago. I'm not sure what that says right there on the horse's tail, or on his butt. But that's depicted on an arbolos found in Italy. The structure found fits the description by Virgil, Augustus, and Quintus Smyrnaes. So archaeologists have started to consider that the discovery is indeed the remains of the subterfuge Greeks used to conquer ancient Troy. Another discovery that supports the archaeologists' claim is a damaged bronze plate with the inscription, "For their return home, the Greeks dedicate this offering to Athena." Quintus Smyrnaes refers to the particular plate in his epic poem, Posthomerica. Well, that's not post-America, that's post-Homerica, like Homeric poems. The plate was also found on the site. So there's another correlation. Can the pieces of the Trojan horse be scientifically verified? Well, the two archaeologists leading the excavation at Boston University, professors Christine Morris and Chris Wilson, say that they have a high level of confidence that the structure is indeed linked to the legendary horse. They say that all the tests performed up to now have only confirmed their theories. The carbon dating test and other analysis have suggested that the wooden pieces and other artifacts date from the 12th or 11th centuries BC. So that connects, says Morris. This matches the date cited for the Trojan War by many ancient historians like Eratosthenes and Proclus. The assembly of the work also matches the description made by many sources, and I don't want to sound overconfident, she says, but I'm pretty certain that we found the real thing. So that's pretty important. I think there's a picture of some of the wood down here, and that'll give us a little bit of an idea. Yeah, here. Oh, well, it jumped. Sorry, guys. Right here in the center, you can see the wood. And if you can make it out in the shots, there are holes, hole down it, and then there are rivets all down here, and the rivets have indent sets. And this is kind of planking like you would do for a boat, where you overlap them and rivet through them and so on, and then the holes would be used to run ropes through to connect and tighten in this dualistic type idea. So that kind of lends to it again there. So pretty interesting to find something like this, and after all this time you hear these ancient tales. But what do y'all think? I mean, is this tale actually something where they had gotten inside of the horse like this, or did it work out a different way and just come up with a mythology that, I mean, it sounds good, it's a great idea. But anybody in modern day, if they were to have, somebody come push this thing up here, even if they had it covered pretty well, no doors in it, no house on top, no ladders leading up, I think you would probably start shooting it with fiery arrows before it could ever get a chance to get close. One thing I also didn't show on that vase there, that was a skinny one, if you look real close, they do have wheels on it, but it's little bitty wheels. They almost look like bicycle size compared to the people. But then again, that horse isn't big enough to hold anybody. Like this one you can get up into, but the one that they showed there, they could barely fit their heads into. Then again, it wasn't tall enough to reach up over a castle wall or anything, was it either? So was this just the front half of it some way, and squish it up tighter together and run the stairs the opposite way, and you have a siege engine like what's seen in the area and even in the Bible and so on later? Or did they actually have a giant horse with people in it? I'll tell you another story here on the way out. Back when we had our band, one of the last ones that we formed got to be done through this guy that I had met. He was a drummer. Went over to his house, and I thought it was pretty neat because what he did was he made dioramas and just a myriad of different things for the movie production company that was running Las Colinas. And he worked with quite a few different people there, but he used to make miniatures of things and worked in a lot of different movies and stuff. But whenever I met him, what he was working on was Wishbone, the series. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a little dog, and it's a Jack Russell Terrier, and he's got a paw print on his ear. We have one now, and when it was born, it had a paw print on its ear, but it's kind of smearing out now, which is kind of sad. But he was working for there, and he had made a few things for him and stuff, and had a separate room that he would do this type of work in, a couple of them actually. And so I got all interested in it, and he goes, yeah, and so he took me in the room, and he had so much stuff and everything, just boom, and he goes, hey, you ever seen this? Hey, did you ever see RoboCop? And so it was pretty neat. But what he was working on right there on the table was a Trojan horse. And it looked pretty much like this right here, but didn't have a cabin on its back or nothing. And I said, "Oh, what are you doing here? A Trojan Horse type thing?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm working for Wishbone." And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "It's the kids show and everything where the dog figures it out and he's like a person and da 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 da." And I go, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm doing that and everything." I get my credits on the show all the time whenever I have it. It falls up under the people that did this type of work and everything. So I even got to go a couple of times on one of their sets. One of their times they made this whole fake set where they took a whole bunch of 2x4s and built a structure and put fake grass on it and put it out on a part of a golf course out in Las Colinas, not the real nice one there. And they filmed it and blue screened it, and it was supposed to be something totally different. And about 4 months later, I got to see that along with the Trojan Horse type idea that he had put along with it. One time he built me a Spanish galleon. He'd come over and seen all my giant fish tanks and everything, and I had one I was building, and I told him I was going to put these shark type of fish in there, and we made some conversation. I talked about a boat, and he said that he does it, but that was about it. So I came over, and he was building a Spanish galleon, one of these real expensive ones out of a kit. And I said, "Oh, that's cool. You're building it like authentic." And he goes, "Yep. Then I'm going to destroy it, and then we're going to put it in your fish tank." And I was like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" And he goes, "Yeah, I want to build it like you were talking about having a fake boat in there, but instead of buying some little rickety thing, I'm going to make a real one, and then I'm going to destroy it, and then I'm going to age it in the whole 9 yards and everything." And I said, "Well, listen, these are live fish, so you can't put all these weird glues and paints." And he goes, "Oh, I didn't think about that." We had to talk about it a little while. Anyhow, he ended up doing it for me. He had a treasure chest in it. There were little skeletons. He took a couple of the skeletons and he carved on the inside of their bone and then put some floating material in there, and it made their arms float just a little bit and stuff. Whenever you got to intricate looking at this thing, it was real cool. I put a whole bunch of spires of petrified wood and little hold areas that made it look like up in Utah and places, with holes going through it there. And I put in a bunch of different types of freshwater sharks, so Leporinius, which are yellow and black striped like a bumblebee, which are real cool, and black red-tailed sharks, rainbow sharks that they have there, bala sharks, which really kind of look like a black tip shark. They're silverish and they have little black tips on their fins. None of these are really truly sharks, though. The black bala shark is really a type of minnow form, but it was pretty neat. Just thought I'd share that with you too. But it did look a lot like this. Hell, you can look that up. I might do that right now. Look up Wishbone, Battle of Troy. Let me know what y'all think downstairs. Peace.